so my friend in seminary was from South Carolina, and his South Carolina Presbyterian roots went deep. And he tells a story about his grandmother who was at the pharmacy waiting for a prescription. Now, the South is also the land of Southern Baptists, so it's not surprising that while she was sitting there, someone sat down and asked her if she had been born again. And she looked at him and said, "Son, I'm Presbyterian. I was born right the first time." So I tell you that because in this story, if we imagine ourselves to be the Jesus Spirit-driven side of this equation, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. We're the Nicodemus folks. We're the ones who, at least for myself, can talk about being a cradle Presbyterian who wouldn't know what it is like to be born again because I was baptized in the tepid waters of 3 sprinkles and have known them all the days of my life. And I too would probably come to Jesus in this day in the night for fear of what he had to tell me, for fear of association with him and all his polity be damned spirit-drivenness. How can we begin again? One of my favorite renderings of Holy Week is from the Gospel according to Andrew Lloyd Webber. And so viewing of Jesus Christ Superstar is an annual event, at least in my household. And there's a song that is my favorite in the whole musical. It's not actually in all productions of the musical, but more of the more contemporary ones it usually is. It's called "Could We Start Again, Please?" And it's what immediately I was drawn to when I was thinking about this. How do we begin again? The song is right after the betrayal and denial of Jesus, and he is being beaten by the crowds and the soldiers. And in the backdrop of that beating, Mary Magdalene and Peter sing a song about, couldn't we just all start again? You had my back. I've been living to see you, dying to see you, but it shouldn't be like this. This was unexpected. What do I do now? Could we start again, please? I've been very hopeful so far. Now for the first time I think we're going wrong. Hurry up and tell me this is just a dream. Or could we start again, please? I think you've made your point now. You've even gone a bit too far to get your message home. Before it gets too frightening, we ought to call a halt. So could we start again, please? Could we start again? If you look at the picture in your bulletin, the artwork about Nicodemus, he's shrouded in darkness that is also intentionally womb-like. In fact, Mary Wiley, the nurse is still strong in Mary Wiley, Like being an elder, you're always an elder, you're always a nurse. And she noted that if you turned it upside down, it's like the birth canal going down to that moon. Nicodemus was born once, but he doesn't know how to be born again. I think about the existential crisis for Nicodemus. He has done all the things right. He has given his life in service to his community, to his God, and to his people. Eugene Peterson, Presbyterian minister, is right to point out that we are a little overly unkind to the Pharisees because they're who Jesus bangs his head up against. The Pharisees kept the Jews, for 600 years without temple and without home. When their world fell apart, it was Pharisees living in communities of diaspora Jewish life that held them close to Torah and to Sabbath. And Nicodemus sat at the center of that, doing what he knew to do, and I have to imagine doing it quite well. We would be wrong to imagine that Nicodemus ever displeased God and ever did any of what he did in his many days out of any motivation other than, this is what I know to be faithful and true. Jesus is a little bit of a young whippersnapper to all of that. And he's God. So we know who wins, right, in this story. But I think there's just this beautifulness to this recognition that Jesus isn't trying to tell Nicodemus and all those with him that they have done wrong and should live in shame. He's trying to break open the crustiness of their faith, to take the walls off our sanctuaries, to enliven a ritual that was about an abundant life and has maybe become too much about life support. It's not that it was wrong, but it had its season, and now out of season, it is dying on the vine. And so Jesus comes to his people, to the Jews, as a rabbi, a Pharisee among Pharisees, and says, but here's a new spirit. Here's the new thing God is doing among us. Do you not perceive it? And the rub is Nicodemus perceives it. And he wants what Jesus has. But he's scared. Because he has so deeply invested himself in the faithfulness of the very tradition Jesus is trying to break. One of the absolute least favorite medical things that, and I've worked in hospitals, I've worked on oncology floors, I've worked in children's hospitals where every story is terrifying. To this day, the thing I most hate hearing about is when a doctor says a bone has grown wrong and they have to break it and reset it and let it break it. Because that just like intentionally breaking a bone just makes me go heebie-jeebie. Right? Jesus has come to break this bone. Not because the bone is wrong, but because the bone is no longer growing true. And so he's going to have to break it down a little bit to build it back up in the spirit, to build it back up in this effervescent, joyous explosion of faithfulness. He's going to take Judaism off the life support and trust in the miracle of rebirth. And oh, Nicodemus wants to. Oh, he loves the idea of that. But this is all I've known. This is what got me where I am here today. This is what my mentors and my mentors' mentors taught them. This is what got us through 600 years of oppression and homelessness. And you're telling me it's not good enough? I've got to give that up like a rejection to those who loved me? I don't have it in me. Oh, but that looks good. This is not a situation in where we say, oh, the grass always looks greener on the other side. The grass is greener on the other side. It's like my yard. Everyone's grass is greener from my yard, and I know it. But I don't know that I have it in me to change what I'm doing to get what they're getting. And it's really all too easy to judge Nicodemus or the Nicodemuses in our lives for their fear, without forgetting that what we're asking them is to unroot themselves from something that has loved them well. Examples of this struggle are all around us. From the trivial to the society breaking. Whether we're engaging the questions of what should the institution of policing in America look like, or whether we're asking ourselves whether it makes sense to teach kids by standing up and lecturing to them. We have institutions embedded in the system of how we got here that don't measure up to know what we would know is the best way to move forward. But we're all a little scared, a little unsure of how to take that step, and a little wanting to honor what got us here. And that's not wrong. It's why Nicodemus waited till the lights went out. And everyone else went home from the Presbyterian meeting after Nicodemus got to say, yeah, that Jesus needs to go back to his polity class. But then he got to kind of sidle up with Jesus on the way out and say, okay, I want what you've got. But I don't know how. And I don't know if I can. Could we start again, please? We have gotten to a point, I think, as a people and a society where we actually have made something of a joke of this question, right? I was thinking about how little faith we have in New Year's resolutions, right? Where it's a lingering tradition to kind of name but not name them because we know before we name them that we're not going to do them. We lack the resolve. I was reading about ways to change habits, bad habits. And what was fascinating to me is there were all these articles that have lots of the same things, blah, blah, blah. You can fill up the shelves with pop psychology. What I really loved was one of them actually named, first you've got to figure out why you want to change it. And I loved that someone took and had that question, right? It was just like last week, we had that picture about Jesus turning back to his baptismal identity, and this was why he could turn his back on the devil's temptations, right? It wasn't that Jesus knew to say no, no, no. It was that Jesus, living in this identity, had those answers clearly pointed out for him. Right? He knew why these things were no, no, no. And in our childhood, in the development of scriptural tradition at our basic level, we understand that when we're teaching our children, they're not going to understand the whys, right? So we just tell them the laws. You do this, you don't do this. And when they break one, we tend to get mad at them, whereby whether we meant it or not, we understand that it's fear of their parent is the why that they follow yes or no. The struggle is that we don't very often grow up and get to a point where we start to question the absoluteness of the Torah, of the concrete instructions of our childhood, and start to question, like the wisdom literature and the prophets, whether the things we thought we knew about the world really are true. And if they aren't, how do we navigate this very adult faith? Because our childhood beliefs aren't sufficient to get us through this day. The Pharisees decided to just keep making new laws until they had something like 642 of them. Case law at its worst. Every time a new situation erupted, we'll create a new law that governs just this situation until you need your lawyer to walk around with life with you to tell you what all the laws are. Jesus deconstructs all of that to say it's as basic as this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And then be adult enough and mature enough to figure out how to apply that law to every situation. Yeah, but that's not what I want, Jesus. Just give me a how-to manual and a yellow brick road, because I don't really want to have to think about it. And I'm scared I'll do it wrong. One of the things that makes me Presbyterian is that I was born as a Presbyterian. One of the things that keeps me Presbyterian is how much I love every week coming to this font and confessing our sin and hearing again that God loves us and God is working to make us new. Every single week we are invited to be born again. Joanne said at First Light, I don't think I was born again once. I think I was born again 3 times today. And so every week in worship, we get up here and we say, let's talk about the ways our bones are growing wrong. Let's ask God to break them and then build them back up. And let's be reminded that at every stage of that, we're loved all the same, with all God's heart. And if that's true, then the fear should dissipate. Because it's not about getting it right. It's about making the effort to get it right. Thomas Merton says, I don't know that I am pleasing to God, but I know my desire to please God is pleasing to God. Right? It's not that we got it right. It's that we made the effort. It's that we confessed. We opened ourselves up to change, and we did our best to follow the Spirit's leading. And when we fall flat on our face because we did it wrong, God loves you, God sets you back up, and we try it again. Which is why you're supposed to come to worship every week. Can we begin again? Yes. But we have to figure out why we're doing this. With whom are we going to do this? We have to be honest about what works and what doesn't. We have to be open to affirmation and accountability. We have to hold ourselves and one another accountable to the change we know we need. And then trust that all along the way, you are always God's beloved. Right or wrong, successful or not. Friends, let's begin again.